So it's time to remove the steering wheel out of this 124. I found that these little spudger tools do a reasonable job of getting the star out of the steering wheel, so you've got access to the centre bolt. You don't actually have to rip this whole horn pad off, you only need access to that centre bolt on the non-airbag version. That's what that spudger looks like up close. Any kind of thin spudger will work to get that out. It's obviously a different procedure on the airbag cars. They need to come off, and I think you've got bolts at the rear to get the whole airbag assembly off. But hey, I don't have airbags, so I'm not going to show you that. By far the easiest way to get that centre bolt out of the steering wheel is with an impact. You can do it by hand, but it can be quite a struggle. And you need to counter hold the steering wheel. I wouldn't quite trust the steering lock to hold all of that torque without braking, but they are pretty strong. But this, absolute piece of cake. It'll just spin it straight out. Now this steering wheel I've had off before, and I've actually made a marking showing how to reinstall it. I just used a permanent marker on the actual shaft and on the splines, so it's pretty easy to get that aligned correctly. You can use a sharp instrument also to make a line, but this has done the job in any case before. And usually you might get it off by 1 or 2 splines on either direction when it comes to reinstalling, and you just take it off and correct it once you've been for a test drive. Instrument cluster on this car has been in and out so many times, it's actually ridiculously easy just to pull out with my hands. Sometimes you will need to use those special tools that hook in from the sides, but not on this car. So it's just a case of pulling it forward, and I'm going to have to reach behind it and disconnect everything. So there's not a great deal more to go. I'm going to have to get all of this off. This knob has to come off, and then unbolt the light switch. This cover comes off. The parking brake handle has to come off. This just pops off easily. This bottom cover comes off with a number of screws. Glove box liner has to come off, or at the very least disconnect this. And yeah, there's just a number of bolts holding the dash on, and then it's ready to come off. Really on the home stretch now as far as removing the dash is concerned. So this piece just pops out this way and then unhooks from there. You can see the shape of that. That's not supposed to be that bent, so this doesn't have a particularly good grip. You don't want to try and flex that straight because it's just going to snap off. Of course, these are no longer available, so be very careful with it. This side, I've already loosened the nut on this headlight switch, and then this comes out in a similar fashion. I just have to disconnect the headlight level switch. I think North American cars don't have that because the headlights are not allowed to move, but yeah, that's just vacuum operated, so I'll just disconnect that. So now moving on to this lower cover, it's just a case of removing all of these screws here. There may be some missing under my front cover here. I've had this off before and I never found the screws, but you can see what needs to be done there. So that's now nice and loose, that's ready to come off. There is a clip holding that on the side as well, and we just need to disconnect the parking brake cable now. It's just a case of unhooking it from that mechanism there. Very easy. And that's out now, so this cover can be taken away and stored safely. And the bottom one as well. Yours may be different because, as mentioned, I have missing screws down there. Headlight switch can now just be twisted out of the dash and moved out of the way. It can be left hanging there, that's perfectly fine. And we've got that screw on the side. We must not forget about that. And then the ones on the top. This is almost ready to come out. So these are the clips that hold the glove box liner in. You just pop the center out and then the surround comes out after that, and then you can just pull this liner out. And this is what you want to disconnect, the light inside that liner. Just pull off the 2-pin connector. Now, I have disconnected the battery by now, I forgot to mention. Probably should do that before you even start removing the dash, but yeah, that is done. And we also need to disconnect the handle that opens up the hood as well. There's just one screw in there that needs to be removed, and that can come out. And that's a similar procedure to disengaging the parking brake release handle. There's more screws under here you can see that need to be undone. Just 2 for this side. Now they're out, we can consider starting to remove this dash. Well, after taking these top ones out. The trick to removing the dash is you need to get the middle of it to lift up over those 2 windscreen vents. That's a real struggle. It took me like almost an hour to get that to release because this thing was ridiculously tight, but I got there in the end. So I just stuck my hands around the middle section and lifted up and made sure that they cleared that AC box. And you've also got lights that light up the thumb wheels on those vents. I didn't show those, but they just clip out as well. And that's the aspirator motor for the climate control. It just hides in there behind the glove box. And there are the prizes that we're after. Not a great deal of clearance in there to access these, but I got them in the end. I just disconnect the rod and then twist them out of position. There is a locking tab on there, you just need to squeeze that in and pop it out. That's the locking tab there. Partially damaged, but that will still work. And you can see the damage to the diaphragm. Don't worry about that, I found that. You can see it's all torn up in there. There's bits of rubber actually falling out. That's the most common failure of these. The other one was a real bitch to remove. There's absolutely no room to work in there. This is what I did in the end. I actually ended up using the camera just to see what the hell was going on because I couldn't even see where the locking tab was to press it. It's in a most ridiculous location. They really could have done a better job with this this side. This is just an absolute nightmare. But yeah, so once I removed the rod and the clip, I was able to activate that locking thing with the screwdriver and then twist it out. So that's the procedure there. And this one has failed in exactly the same way. Diaphragm on the outside, torn up. What a nightmare, but they're out. And they are original too, so these are both from 1990, they've never been changed. After all these years, I figured a way of opening these things up without cracking them every time very quickly. I did struggle for about an hour and a half, and I did crack one of them. I do have a spare, but once I worked it out, I can do it in 5 minutes. The trick with the black cap, when this is clipped together, is getting your flat blade screwdriver in here, pushing hard against the black plastic while pulling at the same time. Don't put excessive pressure on these things because they will just crack off, and you just work your way around, releasing one at a time. So it's like this, but putting all of the pressure on the tab from under here. With the top cap, it was a case of simultaneously pushing down the tab with a thin flat blade screwdriver when it's inside this tab, and twisting gently a flat blade screwdriver between there to separate it. And it only needs to separate like 2 millimeters. Once the clip is underneath here, leave it alone and move on to the next one, and then the whole thing just pops off. No breakage. So the first one I did, one of these tabs is cracked. If you crack one, it's still actually going to work because it's still held together pretty tightly. There might be a minor vacuum leak at that cracked section, but I might actually just try gluing the little crack that's in the tab. It hasn't broken off completely, but I do have a spare one of these, so I can rebuild that anyway. But yeah, I'm glad I know how to do it now. It just takes practice, and you can get these things cracked open with no damage every time once you know the trick. Unfortunately, I can't video it because I got no way of holding the phone at the same time, but yeah.